There is Hope Radio. Your radio host is the Let's Get Real Preacher Rich D of Creating Futures.
Welcome to There's Hope Radio. This is your radio host, Preacher Rich D. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking about what is free praise worship and what I call prophetic worship. Before I define free praise and prophetic worship, this define the words praise and worship in the arena of a song service, the worship time of a church service in a Pentecostal charismatic setting. Praise. Act of singing songs that express adoration, gratitude, reverence to God, to glorify God, celebrate His attributes, acknowledge His works. It is a concept of acknowledging God's greatness, expressing thankfulness for His goodness, and honoring Him for who He is. Generally, within the charismatic realm, when it comes to praising God in the midst of a song service, is singing songs that are energetic, more outwardly expressive. You might use the term lively. It would be seen as worship expressed via clapping, jumping, dancing, shouting, raising of hands. What about the definition for worship? Act of loving, revering, giving honor to God, glorifying in the realm of the inner man, the heart. It is primarily a state of the heart and spirit. It is generally seen as more meditative, contemplative, less energetic, less lively. It would be seen as worship expressed via bowing, laying prostrate, weeping, raising of hands. Taking these two definitions, let's look at what praise and worship would look like in a charismatic Pentecostal church service. Generally speaking, in a church service setting, there are songs that lead to a more praise, lively style of worship, and other songs that lead towards a more meditative style of worship. Generally speaking, during the song service time of the church service, the worship leader is leading out in the song service. They are singing and the congregation is following along via the lyrics on the screen. It is structured. Overall, everyone is following the structure. Overall, the worship leader is following the worship set, the quote, planned agenda, unquote, for the worship. So what do I mean by free praise worship? Let's first look at Ephesians chapter 5, verses 18-19 in the Amplified Bible. Verse 18, do not get drunk with wine, for that is wickedness, corruption, and stupidity, but be filled with the Holy Spirit and constantly guided by Him. Verse 19, speak to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, offering praise by singing and making melody with your heart to the Lord. Generally speaking, free praise worship refers to praise and worship that is not following a set agenda. It is worship where the Holy Spirit is leading the worship leader more than their song set. It is worship where the worshipers, the church congregation, are being led by the Holy Spirit and have no restrictions in how they give praise and worship. So in regards to free praise worship and the worship leader, during the time of free praise worship, the worship leader may change the entire direction of the song service. The song service may be longer or shorter than planned. There may be interruptions of the song service for prayer, prophecy, or the operation of other gifts of the Spirit. During a time of free praise worship regarding the individuals within the congregation, they may be praising and worshiping with complete freedom with no hindrances. They may be expressing words of praise and worship that have nothing to do with the lyrics are to a song. They may be shouting out words of praise, expressing prayers regarding the lyrics of a song. They may be contemplative while others are more expressive. The worshipers may feel led to minister to others during worship. In the midst of free praise worship, the Lord may give the worship leader lyrics for a new song, lyrics that the worshipers can easily follow along, or it may be a song comes from an individual from the congregation with a new song. There may also be singing in tongues. So what about prophetic worship? I would say that free praise worship and prophetic worship are similar. There's a freedom for the Holy Spirit to be the worship leader rather than the worship leader. The worship leader and the worship team are flowing with the leading of the Holy Spirit. In the midst of worship, there may be prophetic words over the congregations or individuals. There may be a sudden change in the style of worship, from more of a praise, lively worship, or more of a meditative worship. There may be a sudden change of the theme regarding worship and the songs sung. So in other words, it may be instead of the worship leader having an agenda, that the Holy Spirit has agenda and is leading the worship leader to change their song set, to change the songs that are sung, to change the environment of worship. It may turn out that the song service is more of a ministry time than a worship time. I want to end this podcast with a caution. Be aware if you're more used to a very structured song service, free praise worship may seem disorderly, not follow the structure you're used to. If you're not careful, you'll be focusing more on people and what they're doing than entering into worship. If not careful, you can become one who quenches and grieves the Holy Spirit in your life and in others. If you're not able to enter into a time of free praise worship, if you must have lyrics to praise and worship God, you may be more of a spectator than a worshiper. It would be good to check what is going on in your heart. Maybe much of your worship has been all about singing songs, not praising and worshiping God. Maybe it's time to worship in spirit and truth. John chapter 4, verses 23 to 24 in the Amplified states, "But a time is coming and is already here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit, from the heart, the inner self, and in truth. For the Father seeks such people to be his worshipers. God is spirit, the source of life, yet invisible to mankind, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth." When it comes to worshiping in spirit and truth, here is a truth. Worship is much more than what takes place inside of a church building. Worship should be a lifestyle. It should be how we live, how we behave, how we speak. All that we do is to give worship and honor to our God. You might say that is true free praise worship. My next podcast will be Hebrew words that describe various forms of praise and worship. I will be doing another podcast that is going to be titled Grieving and Quenching the Holy Spirit. And it'll talk about what is grieving and quenching the Holy Spirit. And it'll also be covering what is blasphemy of the Holy Spirit and how we can go from grieving and quenching the Holy Spirit to actually being guilty of blasphemy of the Holy Spirit.
You've been listening to There Is Hope Radio. All advice and counsel given was for informational purposes only. To listen to There Is Hope Radio podcast, obtain show transcripts, or to keep There Is Hope Radio on the air, go to creatingfutures.org/There Is Hope. That's creatingfutures.org/There Is Hope.